Panthers came in waves on Saturday night against Ottawa, used a 4-goal second period to break it open, and every goal that was scored by the Cats was from the Four Nations.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Monday, February 10th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers and on Blue Sky at LOFLA Panthers. You can follow the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And if you're watching on the YouTube channel, make sure to press that like button. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel customers can bet $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. And I hope that you guys had an incredible weekend with the Panthers winning, and also with, if you happen to be a Philadelphia Eagles fan and got to see your team with the victory on Super Bowl Sunday as they defeated the Kansas City Chiefs in a game that wasn't even close. But they made it a lot closer than the game actually was there. But let's talk some hockey here on the podcast for the Florida Panthers. Now, going into the Four Nations break at 34-20-3 for the Panthers. 57 games through, 25 left to go for that race for the top of the division, and just for the Panthers to just overall get their game right, which they are doing going into this one. 5 straight home wins for the Panthers, and then coming in waves. And to think that even on the penalty kill that they were on, the Panthers won the draw, got a clear, and didn't allow the Ottawa Senators to really establish a good amount of their zone time. But even on that goal that Brady Tkachuk scored for the Sens, the Panthers did a really great job on the penalty kill of just not allowing a lot of space there. It was just an errant pass that Barkov had to Kulikov, putting him in a really tough position right before he was trying to break the puck out. So passing right to the middle in your own end when you're on the PK spells a little bit of disaster for them. But really, that was the only mistake that the Panthers really made all night. And to think that the Panthers panic level was very, very minimal. I mean, at this point of the season in game 57, your panic level is not even at a 1. It's a 0.001 for this team, for them at this point. But even for the Panthers and their domination of zone time, there was times where they shot themselves in the foot when they were trying to get the passes back from low to high and then just not connecting on the tape when they would get it back high, and then having to reestablish and get and have the guys tag back up for them. So I felt like the Panthers, they were really that was the main flaw of the game going in, when that resulted in the 1-0 deficit for them. But for the beginning of the second period, going into the period on the PK, Ottawa gets 2 shots on goal. There was a 2-on-1 that they even had a little bit after, and then the Panthers responded by getting a power play of their own, which when seeing Matthew Tkachuk go from the goal line towards the right circle, I sat next to Alex Baumgartner on Saturday night in the press box, and he was even saying shoot it, that he should shoot. And look what happens. The Matthew Tkachuk shoots it and then beats Linus Hallmark on the far side for him on that goal. So drawing Jake Sanderson back to the middle, thinking that shot, which multiple teams study that the Panthers are best on the power play when they get it from the right flank down low and then back to the slot, thinking that Matthew Tkachuk going back a little bit up on the goal line, that was going to be the pass that was going to be used for Matthew Tkachuk. But then the fact that they could score on the power play in so many different ways is the really encouraging part of the Panthers, and just how lethal they can be on the man advantage for them. But then Alexander Barkov scores on the delayed penalty with Ridley Gregg putting a glove to face to Sam Reinhart and then taking him down the 6-on-5 for the Panthers on a redirection by Barkov, who was parked at the blue paint, but very close for Niko Mikkola. Thankfully, he did not tip the puck because it would have been blown dead for a high stick for that. But thankfully for the Panthers, he missed it, and the Barkov was able to get that goal off the redirection for them. For this one, not a lot of post-whistle fireworks as much as we've seen in previous matchups for them. I think it's the fact that due to the fact that they're going into a break and and a lot of the guys who aren't going to the Four Nations have their vacation set. So that was, and they don't want to be spending a lot of it rehabbing. But the fact that the Panthers stood up for Sergei Bobrovsky after Matthew Highmore crashed to the net after that, and Anton Lundell stood up for his teammate, and the fact that the referees thought that they were going to send him to the box, and then they said no, they rescinded that. So it was the Panthers did in fact get a power play off that as well for them. So hey, Buffalo, once again, that's how you stand up for a teammate. And then Gustav Forsling's goal. It was a matter of a juicy rebound going the Panthers' way, where the Ottawa Senators were coming in on the rush, got the shot, where the momentum of Brady Tkachuk and Drake Batherson's momentum carried him past the goal line, and then Nate Schmidt right there to just handle the puck. No one was there to check the puck out of his stick. Slowly brought the puck up and allowed the guys to get up, and then getting that stretch to Gustav Forsling coming up the gut. And the fact that, like I mentioned, the guys of Brady Tkachuk and Drake Batherson being so down in the goal line, no one was there to get him on the back check. The defense was backing into their own zone, which ended up the Gustav Forsling having that open shooting lane when he was coming up the gut, and then beating Linus Ullmark on the glove side for them. And then the fourth one, a bobble in the neutral zone in the second period, which is the long change period for each team in the NHL. And the fact that just like Gus Forsling didn't have anyone back checking him, it allowed Matthew Tkachuk to be the trailer in that one to go up in the Panthers zone, in the Senators zone, once they got it, and then drawing the defense towards him, and then getting Sam Bennett on that one timer, which he had a quick trip to the tunnel after getting a puck to the face, but that was a quick trip for him. He got back within a minute of going down. So thankfully for Sam Bennett, he was okay. And then another pet adoption fee that's going to be paid for by Benny's buddies. And to think that Sam Bennett, thinking that he was going to go on this much of a heater after going the past 20 without a goal, and at certain points not getting a single point. So the Panthers getting this run for multiple contributors, and the 2-week break is so beneficial for them. It's like you wish there wasn't a break for them. And then going into the third period, continue to win their draws. Even the Senators bringing in the extra attacker gave themselves no chance when Timmy Stützle / Carter Verhaeghe away from the play in frustration, and the Panthers getting the empty net short-handed goal, where it was every player on the Panthers getting a shot on goal. Every goal that was scored by the Panthers was someone going into the Four Nations tournament. So it was just a matter of everyone getting it on the night, and everybody feasting. And it's once again the Panthers and the Senators. It's one of those teams that the Panthers just love playing against. It's just one of those teams that the Panthers just continue to enforce their will. They were coming on waves, getting that second level, and getting to the blue paint. That was really the part of the game that was really stood out, of how often they were just overwhelming Linus Ullmark. And then I got to give credit to Sergei Bobrovsky as well. When the Panthers were up 4-1, there was a chance that Brady Tkachuk had where Bob was committed to his left, and then right when that pass was centered to Brady, he was able to get the pad on it without the stick as well. So the fact that you're going into the next period with a 3-goal lead instead of a 2, that really helped with the gameplay for the Panthers to just really settle in and not anything silly happen for the final 20, when you know what's coming up after that for them. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more about the Panthers' 5-1 win against the Ottawa Senators. We're gonna mix in what the guys said after the game based on the Four Nations tournament coming up. We're gonna discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you missed the opening tip or want to bet the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're going for a bigger payout, you can even combine the live bets into a same game parlay. Right now, new customers can bet $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Segment number 2 here on this Monday, February 10th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Here, post Super Bowl Sunday for here on the podcast, and now we're at the Four Nations break for the NHL, and the guys have started hitting the ice for Team Canada, which we'll discuss a little bit in segment number 3. But the Panthers, 8 of their last 11, and once again, it's like you wish that this break didn't come at this time for the Cats here, which they are hot at the right time, which won a 3-point lead in the Atlantic Division, with the Toronto Maple Leafs having 2 games in hand after losing against the Vancouver Canucks on the road to finish their West swing right before. So some of the things that the guys said after the game, where Sam Bennett spoke about how the big save that Sergei Bobrovsky had on Brady Tkachuk towards the end of the second period, which kept the Panthers in their 3-goal lead going into the to the third. He spoke about how it was a vintage Sergei Bobrovsky performance, and also spoke about how different it is for how him and Matthew Tkachuk, who have been friends for the longest time, for them, about how they know that on the other side it's a hard competitor. They know his compete he knows his compete level. So the fact that they are going to go against each other in a tournament like this, and they know that how they conduct themselves on the ice, Sam Bennett says that it's something that is not going to affect their friendship. Then that he knows it's not going to take it easy on them, and that he's going to do the same thing right back at him. So that's one thing for him. Sam Reinhart on that assist for Matthew Tkachuk's power play goal. That was point number 600 for Rhino. And it's crazy. I looked up the stats on Hockey Reference. 10 more points in his career with the Florida Panthers than he had in Buffalo in 150 less games doing it in South Florida. So that's another thing of just how incredible how much Sam Reinhart elevated his game, even though he was a constant 20-goal scorer for the Buffalo Sabres there. It's just, once again, just the situation there, and just their inability to maximize their talent has just been an issue constantly there. And also spoke about how Four Nations coming up, it's an honor. Spoke about how it's a lot of guys have had missed opportunities because we're going on 9 years without the last international tournament. And one thing is, I just continue to wonder is, we've seen Sam Reinhart clutch in a multitude of occasions even on the junior level, which he didn't get the game-winning goal in the 2015 World Juniors against Russia, but he scored the goal that created even more separation for them right before Russia made a little bit of a comeback to make the score at least a little bit more respectable for them. So we saw it then. We saw it in Game 7 of the final. That was the goal, the most iconic goal in the history of the Florida Panthers. And I'm just waiting to see what kind of big moment we're going to see from him in this World Juniors for him. So Matthew Tkachuk also spoke about about the Panthers and just how they were able to just play close to each other and just continue to know where each other are at on the ice as far as the game on Saturday. Spoke about how his shots weren't falling when he was around the net, but he also said that when you are around the net, that good things are going to continue to happen for him. So, and then when he was asked a few questions based on playing, as far as playing against his brother, and then how at one point when Brady Tkachuk scored, they were tied in goals, and then the next goal that Matthew Tkachuk scored, it was him taking the lead. He ignored that part of the question about the competition between them two, and then also the fact that is it a great situation that he scores, you score, but you win. He ignored that part of the question. So it's kind of Matthew Tkachuk sending the message that we make it more about those two brothers going up against each other than he wants for that. And listen, that's gonna it's gonna be a story because of how talented the two brothers are and how big of a profile those two have, where with their father having 500 points in his in his career, almost 500 goals, and still not in the Hall of Fame, which is still a little bit of a crime for Keith Tkachuk, and still how he's not in the Hall for him. But Matthew Tkachuk kept it to the two individual teams, but also but in that question, speaking about it, he actually only answered the final part of the question, saying that what he's looking forward to with them getting to play on the same team in the Four Nations, which we will find out later to see if they are going to play on the same line for them. So very happy for Big Walt, Keith Tkachuk, Chantel, and also once again that they get to see their two sons play together. And also Matthew Tkachuk gave credit to the guys about them earning a vacation and knowing that they're getting the rest that their bodies need for them. Paul Maurice spoke about how strong they got as the game went on. And as I said in the game against the St. Louis Blues, I felt like once again that the Panthers are running marathons while the opposition is running a little bit of a sprint. And you could also compare, if you're a boxing fan, to 12 rounds of a match and how long the opposition could last. And it feels constantly that way with the Florida Panthers. I mean, I go back to the quote from the Amazon series again about what Paul Maurice says. And of course, I'm going to say the clean version of this: pound their freaking butts so that when they get to game 7, they got nothing left. So that's really the message and the mindset that continues over and over about that marathon for the Panthers. And then just getting to the point where they still have the gas, but the opposition's batteries is like 10% or lower once they even get midway to the third period. And the Panthers have historically, we spoke about the Ottawa Senators and the franchise record the Panthers got with 58 shots on goal back in October of 2022 against these Senators. And then they get 47 shots with everyone getting at least one. I decided to ask Paul Maurice, what is it about this matchup that gets the team so fired up? But Paul Maurice also wanted to give credit, which he always gives a lot of respect to his opponents, about them missing guys that just like the Florida Panthers, they were trying to find their identity, even though the Panthers were coming off a President's Trophy. The Ottawa Senators were just trying to get out of rebuild that their former regime, their former general manager and Pierre Dorian was saying the rebuild is over, and that they fell short of expectations. So these are two different versions of this of their own respective teams in 2025 for them. And just but the fact that the fireworks were not there as much in this one, he also spoke about how, hey, these two teams are in the middle of trying to get some positioning. The Ottawa Senators are still in a place where they can't afford to drop any games. So that's also another thing when it comes to these two teams, and just the desperation level, and just the fact that you don't want to do anything dumb that will cost your team. So the fact that they're not in the position that they were, you don't have to take as many of those risks for them. And just when it comes to possibly getting sloppy and then giving the opposition a chance at a man and on a power play for them. So also Paul Maurice was asked about the chirps from one to another. We spoke about Bennett and Tkachuk with each other, but he was asked specifically about Barkov and Tkachuk, and he knows that Barkov will probably chirp him back and just probably give a laugh after, but it'll be how much fun it'll be to watch. And then once everything is over and then they're back to practice next week, they'll give each other hugs, smile, and then get back to what's the most important thing for them is to get to try to repeat as Stanley Cup champions. And also spoke about Sergei Bobrovsky's preparation and pointed out that he has a specific schedule, how he's not worried about him whatsoever. So he's going to get his days that he's going to just do some stretches, take a walk, rest and recoup. And then he's going to get one of those days where he's just going to put on the pads and go in a full practice so that he could keep that rhythm when the Panthers do come back in a practice setting. Spoke about how he knows what's best for his schedule. And he didn't say this specifically on Saturday, but he said this in the past, how it's like the goalies, I rely on Robbie Tallis for it. So that's another thing. It's just letting the goalie guys take care of everything with them. And also spoke about the lifestyle of what he's going to do throughout this break, and the fact that he kind of gave credit to the lifestyle that is here in South Florida about, hey, you put a full day's worth of work, first guy in, last guy out, and the fact that you get to go outside in sunshine and you don't have to deal with snow. So the fact that he's like, oh, I'm going to get an Airbnb in Florida and be on the beach. It's like, oh, wait, kind of saying, oh, wait, I already have that. He didn't say those exact words, but he kind of bragged a little bit of a humble brag for Paul Maurice. So credit to him that he's going to get an earned vacation, but also get to turn on the TV at night and get to see what his players get to do there. And also the fact that he also pointed out that the fans will all have someone to cheer for every single game, which is the great part about us watching it, that even for me doing a coverage, I'll always have something to talk about in relation to the Florida Panthers and just what's going on in Four Nation, which leaves us to our next transition, which we are going to discuss in segment number 3. What's going to happen in the Four Nations? Who's in, who's out, who's going to be starting? We've already seen some tweets out of who's going to be on what line, and we're gonna continue to see who is going to be on what units. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you guys all about Indeed. And you realize your business just needed to hire yesterday, but you can't find an amazing candidate fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen at other sites. Indeed sponsored job puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Third and final segment here on this Monday, February 10th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Monday. So some news came out for the Four Nations as Quinn Hughes, who's missed the last few games for the Vancouver Canucks, he's officially out of the Four Nations tournament. Jake Sanderson is in, and there was possibly some talk about what if John Carlson is the guy who's going to be filling in, but they spoke about it on 32 Thoughts today about how Jake Sanderson is very highly thought of by the management of the USA. So John Carlson is not the one selected to this tournament. Drew Doughty, it was actually announced yesterday, which the final rosters to be submitted for the Four Nations is actually today at 5 p.m. So, but they announced it a day early. Drew Doughty in for Alex Pietrangelo. And the logic behind that is the fact that there's a bigger ceiling with Drew Doughty there versus a guy of Mackenzie Weegar, with Drew Doughty with multiple Stanley Cups and long playoff appearances, logging the minutes, working the power play, playing shorthanded for them. That's another thing for them. Sidney Crosby, he missed the last few games, but he is back for Team Canada there. So he is practicing. And yes, as you could expect, he is on the same line as Nathan MacKinnon, which Sam Reinhart, he is on the same line as Connor McDavid and Mitch Marner. So interesting to see how much that scoring punch could get going for Team Canada for them. Also, we have an all Florida line with Anthony Cirelli, Sam Bennett, and Braden Point for Team Canada. That's going to be the third line. So no Sam Bennett with Brad Marchand. I was constantly running in my head to see what are those guys actually going to be on a line together, and are they going to shake hands even for everything that happened in the playoff series just last year between the Florida Panthers and the Boston Bruins. So bigger questions are, is Philip Gustafsson going to be the guy over Linus Ullmark, who just recently came back only in his second game played this week after missing a good amount of time with injury? Looks like Adin Hill will be the guy as the most recent Stanley Cup champion of the goaltenders in Team Canada. Jordan, I spoke about this even in our pregame show, even though the Panthers didn't face Jordan Binnington in either of their matchups this season. Jordan Binnington is not having the best season for the St. Louis Blues, but he does have that resume. One thing I'm wondering about Team Finland is Niko Mikkola going to be playing on the top pair for Finland with the amount of bodies that are just have just gone down for them, with no Miro Heiskanen for them, and that's another thing that I'm wondering. And for the forwards, there was already question on whether Mikko Rantanen was eventually going to play, which Mikko Rantanen in Carolina, that group overall, especially on the power play, they're struggling. They're winning games, but they're struggling on the power play for them. And the thing is, for Finland, once again, it's a very top-heavy roster in their forward core with their top six. We know Barkov, the best two-way player in the world, who impacts the game so much in every situation. I wonder if he's going to be on the same line as Patrik Laine. I'm going to assume yes. I assume they'll both be on the top power play unit, but Patrik Laine's game with the Montreal Canadiens has also slowed down a bit. He's 8 of his first 9 goals for the Habs. It was on special teams, and we know that he's not really a two-way player for himself. So we'll see what happens. How that combination of him and Barkov on the same line is able to produce, where Barkov's game is one way and Patrik Laine's game is another when it comes to that. So there's got to be it's good. Finland has a lot to deal with for this Four Nations. Even without the injuries, it was a team that I didn't really feel was at the level of the other ones when originally announced for them. But we'll see when it comes to what more comes up in these upcoming games. As Finland's first game is Thursday against the U.S., and then the first game to kick off on Wednesday will be Canada versus Sweden. So the only thing we know right now is the practice lines for Team Canada and who's the first goalie off the ice for them. So that's the only thing we know as regarding that. But we're going to continue the conversation later this week on the other teams, on who is going to be on the line with another, and and also possibly what the special teams positioning could look like, because one player might be in the bumper on their individual teams, but one might have to play the flank for the national team during this Four Nations. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes up this week, as there's going to be some sacrifices. Some centers might have to shift to wing. So that's going to be that. And some defensemen who play on the left side might have to play on their offside as well. So that's another thing to consider when it comes to an international tournament and playing with guys that you are not used to. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We're going to continue the conversation tomorrow on the podcast, and what other Florida Panthers are in it and where they slot in on the other national teams. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, Please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.